Back with another opening video. Going to do a couple different ones tonight because there's a few that I have already opened. One of them was opened and purchased like the other ones, but for some reason I opened it up. The other ones are two that I recently found from my personal collection from when I actually attended these events. This first one here was the first Jim Crockett Promotions visit to the Capitol Center, the former home of the Washington Bullets and the Washington Capitals. Vince McMahon's WWF would never let the Crockett Company use the Capitol Center, and they finally made an agreement that once a year they could use it. This was the first time, and it was at the Great American Bash in July of 1987, and I was in attendance for this terrific card here. And the reason I'm gonna do a couple openings tonight is because these wrestling programs are so thin. There's really nothing to them. This one here looks at the Ric Flair and the Four Horsemen. As the main event of this card was involved all four of the Horsemen. Tully Blanchard, my personal favorite horseman. Dark Journey, his valet, for a very short period of time. And then Double A, Arn Anderson, and then there's J.J. Dillon. And on the other side is the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes, Nikita Koloff, the Garvin brothers, and Jimmy Garvin's real life wife, Precious. And over here you had an article about at the time Jim Crockett Promotions had bought the UWF, and although nobody knew that, and they were appearing on the card. This is Captain Redneck Dick Murdoch versus all-time RS favorite Steve Dr. Death Williams, who I've had a lot of people tell me through the years that I resembled facially. And although I could never be as tough as Dr. Death was, I don't know if that's a compliment or not. I guess that depends on your perspective. Here was the card that came with it. It shows you, I circled who won and who lost. Nikita Koloff, Dusty Rhodes, and the Road Warriors defeated the Four Horsemen inside a steel cage. And still, to this day, the loudest pop I've ever heard at a sporting event for when the Road Warriors came out and they hit Iron Man. Unreal. And then the Rock and Roll Express against the Midnight Express, Dick Murdoch against Dr. Death Steve Williams, Big Bubba Rogers against Barry Windham, and then a couple preliminary matches. And we'll flip over here. There's a picture of the Road Warriors and the Freebirds. And then on the back it has the Armstrong family, although they weren't on this card. Kendall Windham, the Raging Bull, who wasn't on this card, had already left the company by this time. And Jim Cornette. Boy, we don't hear anything from him anymore, do we? And then on the back, some Rock and Roll Express. Ricky and Robert apparently having nothing better to do but sit in front of a Trans Am. So, as you can see, those are very thin. This one here is from the first ever wrestling event I ever attended live. It was 1981 at the Capitol Center. A friend of my dad's took me there with his son. And then I will defeat and destroy Bob Backlund by the Magnificent Morocco. That didn't quite happen, but if you read the blog, you'll know what a Don Morocco fan I was. My childhood role model. Yes, friends, a wrestling heel was my childhood role model. Then you go over here, a picture of Bob Backlund, Mr. USA, Tony Atlas, Pedro Morales, who Morocco won the Intercontinental title from twice and used to call Pedro Molasses, which I always thought was pretty funny. And there's Angelo King Kong Mosca, former CFL Hall of Famer. And then there's the tag team champions at that time, Tony Garea and Rick Martel. And then there's the heel team at the time, the Moondogs, managed by Captain Lou Albano. And then this was the actual card. Some preliminary matches. Tony Atlas by disqualification over the Magnificent Morocco. Tony Garea and Rick Martel over those Moondogs. Andre the Giant, a double disqualification against Killer Khan. George the Animal Steel pulled the upset and defeated Bob Backlund by a countout. And then Pedro Morales, both men were pinned against King Kong Mosca. As you can see, this is the writings of I was not quite 13, just turned 13 when this card occurred. And we'll go over to the rest of it. There's a picture of Greg the Hammer Valentine. Greg before I was the Hammer Valentine. Adrian Adonis, a very young Kurt Hennig, well before he was Mr. Perfect. And then we go to the back with Yoshiaki Yatsu, Pat Patterson, Baron Mikel Cicluna, and Johnny Rodz, who were the longtime TV guys. And then there's Andre the Giant, who's stalking Khan the Killer, who broke Andre's ankle, I believe. So there was that one. Now this one is you have to bear with me a little more because some of these older media guides do not hold well. They do not open well with one hand. This is the 1977-78 media guide for the Buffalo Braves of the NBA. The last year of the Buffalo Braves. They would move to San Diego and become the San Diego Clippers. And that was then followed by the Clippers moved to Los Angeles. Still having trouble. Because these older media guides, they do not hold open flat. So you have to not only open them, you have to hold them open. But for those of you that watched the last video where we pulled out the Kentucky Colonels media guide, you might remember that owner John Y. Brown. Well, owner John Y. Brown wound up allowing the Colonels to go under and bought the Buffalo Braves. And this is actually hilarious. I read this earlier. It is you could tell that he had his publicist write this. John Y. was once described as a person who makes things happen, has proven he knows how to build a winner, and is determined to make a contender out of the Braves as quickly as possible. But this is the great part is below. A man with the Midas touch, John Y. Brown has been a tremendously successful businessman. It talks about how he borrowed money to own Kentucky Fried Chicken. But this is the best part. Beside the Midas touch, Brown wants to maintain his first-class rating with the public, team employees, and media. The handsome 43-year-old businessman. It's a good thing that he, thinks so highly of himself. Having won one title, he's got his sights set on something we rarely achieve. It's a good bet he'll achieve that goal. The handsome 43-year-old businessman, John Y. Brown. Then we go through here. Nate Archibald, who most of you guys will probably think of as a Kansas City Omaha King or a Boston Celtic. The Braves had acquired Archibald before this season, and you don't really remember him much as a Buffalo Brave. I mean, really, who do you remember as a Buffalo Brave other than Bob McAdoo and Randy Smith? Billy Knight, who's more remembered as an ABA player with the Indiana Pacers. See, this is what I really don't like about these type of media guys. They just do not stay open flat. So you tend to get a lot of pictures of my hand. Swen Nader, former ABA, the first ever player to be a first-round draft pick without starting a game in college because he was Bill Walton's backup. Johnny Newman, who was a high-scoring player in college at Ole Miss, and spent time in the ABA. If you read Terry Pluto's great book, Loose Balls, if you haven't, you should. It'll tell you all about Johnny Newman and more. There's John Shoemate. There he is, has Brent Musburger once called him the Greyhound, Randy Smith, who would, after he left Buffalo, he would spend some time with the Cavaliers. Bill Willoughby, who was one of the high school first-round draft picks, along with Darryl Dawkins, the first ever. They were the first pick in the same draft. And there's two former Kentucky Colonels, Will Jones and Ted McLean. You might have saw him in the last video, both of them in the last video. And then we move to some Braves statistics. The NBA All-Star team for 1976 and 77. The Braves apparently up until that had 3 All-Stars. Bob Kaufman, I wouldn't have guessed that name, as a 3-time All-Star. Bob Kaufman. I remember his basketball card, but I don't remember him being that good a player. And it's a whole bunch of Braves stats, Braves records, Braves all-time records versus opponents, how to get the press information for Buffalo, where the team will be staying on the road, and some of the some more of the teams that they'll be playing. I mean, I really like the way these old media guys are made, but boy, they do not help you for something like this. There's the Cavaliers, Bill Fitch with the classic logo. So there's a little bit on the Buffalo Braves with the logo on the back. The final season of the Buffalo Braves. Okay, so now we'll move on real quick to our package for the evening. This another one I pulled out at random, and another one from North Carolina. Again, not sure what this is going to be. So I have prepped the package, but I have not opened it. Ah, well, there's a winner. You can just tell that this is going to be a winner as he unopens it clumsily. Here we go. The 1981 ACC basketball tournament program from the Capitol Center at Landover. This would be North Carolina defeating Maryland by 1 point. And you can tell that I did not look at that, because if not, I would not be fumbling so haphazardly with the Scotch tape. The gentleman that sent this to me did not do me any favors, I assure you, because I don't think this is I think this bag is way too big for the program, as you can see. This is yeah. I know you probably didn't see a lot, so I apologize for that, but this bag was way too big for the program, and the gentleman sealed it up in order to fit it in there, so we can probably can that bag because it's pretty much worthless at this point. So we'll take a quick look through here. Again, an old Capitol Center. Been trying to get the other Capitol Center ACC tournament programs, which I think was 1976 and 1987. So I'm still on the process of trying to find those. Before they played in the ACC, they starred for McDonald's. All right. See, it's funny. All of these businesses that you used to watch on the ACC Basketball Network that we didn't have around here that eventually would come. Holly Farms Fried Chicken. We didn't have a Hardee's. Food Lion was first of the grocery store chain, was first discovered when through the ACC network. The People's Choice for 1981. All right. Clemson with Bill Foster's wife, who offers a nice recipe for Tahitian pork chops. So if anybody wants a Tahitian pork chop recipe, give me a call. I'll be happy to get the magazine out and take a look. Clemson Tiger. There's a young Larry Nance, former Cleveland Cavalier, Phoenix Sun. Larry Nance. There is Larry on a apparently not very good Clemson team. And here's Duke with Mike Krzyzewski. Boy, look at that guy. And there's his wife, Mickey, who offers a recipe for kolaki, which is a Polish cookie. And this looks awful. But if you want to try kolaki, give me a call. This is when Krzyzewski was building Duke, which basically his best players were returning from Bill Foster's team, and then right after this season, they would go downhill for 3 or 4 years. Kenny Denard, one of the most hated players ever for TRS since he undercut Buck Williams in the 1980 ACC Finals. I've written about that about 8 times on TRS, so look it up. Georgia Tech, this was one of their first couple years in the league. As their head coach at the time, Dwayne Morrison, and his lovely wife, Pat, with her recipe for chili. A bonus, you get basketball and food. These guys here, no one that anybody outside of the most hardcore ACC fan would remember. And I don't remember some of these guys. I do remember Steve Neal, point guard. There's David New. I wonder if he's related to Jim Cornette's lawyer, Stephen P. New. Then we go over here to the University of Maryland with Lefty Drizel's wife, Joyce, with a recipe for Maryland crab cakes. And there's the left-hander himself. See, this Maryland team was expected to be a national title contender. They had won the ACC in 1980. They were the preseason favorite, but they did not win the ACC in 81. They won